Hi, I'm James Eade, and welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of Roar, where we talk about raising our voices and speaking up because we've been faced with some fear and intimidation tactics under the current administration that we haven't suffered before in my lifetime. And when we speak up, do we get investigated? So there's strength in numbers. And so we want to not only raise our voice, but to roar when we feel there's injustice, when we feel that the government is not operating under the shared values of the United States citizens as I was taught them when I was young. And most of my peers feel the same way. This is not the kind of country that we believe in, that we signed up for. And what's going on now with Iran, I'm going to talk about that with Rick Rosner and Donald Steiny. Hi guys. That's the thing that's burning in my mind is this ceasefire followed by missiles flying, then a ceasefire, and now some sort of peace agreement has been. We never formally declared war on them, but this peace agreement seems like it's left Iran better off than it was before.
Well, it's not a full agreement. Right now, it's an MOU. It's called a Memorandum of Understanding, which is an agreement to do more talks to maybe reach an agreement. But right now, the Strait of Hormuz is closed down again. And that I think that memorandum is in abeyance. It's been suspended because there's shit happening.
I see. I think that was not clear, but we've had these types of announcements, and the stock market goes up, and then we've had an announcement, and the stock market goes down. The price of oil has been wildly fluctuating. So it's very volatile.
Yeah, they didn't do any announcements today to goose the stock market because it's a stock market holiday because it's Juneteenth.
Yes.
A holiday I'm sure that Trump hates, but a federal holiday nonetheless.
Yeah. And so, Donald, do you know the significance of Juneteenth?
Of course. It's when one group of, I think Texas or something, allowed the slaves to be free.
So I had to give myself more information on it this morning. So Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation in January 1863. That doesn't necessarily free many people. It's a war tactic. It takes two years until the Congress does the 13th Amendment in January 1865, which frees a few more slaves, but it really takes victory in the Civil War and federal troops going through, I guess, and freeing slaves kind of state by state. And it takes till June 19th, 1866, so exactly 160 years ago, for Texas to get the news that they have to free their slaves. How that works, I don't know. I'm sure they weren't, they didn't do it super willingly.
The Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves in the Confederacy. And the Confederacy had seceded at the time, so they said, well, fuck you, we're not even part of America. Yeah, and so actually, as you said, it was sort of more of a political maneuver. But
plus, like the way it was structured is you can be free if you're in the Confederacy. If you come fight for the Union, you can come get your ass shot at. So there was I just read a novel called Horse, which is about the greatest racing horse in history, based on a real horse named Lexington down in Kentucky and elsewhere. And the African American people who cared for that horse, and that whole period this horse lived during the frickin' Civil War, and it offered the book lays out the various terrible choices for Black people in the South. Continue to be enslaved, try to sneak away, maybe get shot sneaking away, And if you sneak away, it's you're sneaking away to get shot at some more in the Union Army. So freaking shit did not calm down until
I think there was a movie, if I'm not mistaken, Glory, that was talking about the African American soldiers that were part of, and they tended to be kind of cannon fodder.
Yeah, and they presented it as a noble sacrifice, but
right.
On the other hand, you could look at it as, wait, you took all my labor and the labor of my family for decades, generations, and now you're going to get me killed.
Yeah. So. Yeah. But so there were times when we were even more divided than we are today. And it seems to be electorally true that the southern states still seem to be more pro-Trump than certainly the Northeast, the West Coast, and even from what I'm understanding, the Midwest is.
I read a great book called "How the South Won the Civil War," and basically, to some degree, our system is really fucked up because we wind up with the every state has 2 senators. So California has 2 senators, and all these little
40 million people,
little states with nobody in them also have 2 senators. And rural people are less educated generally, and it's less educated people that become MAGA. So we wind up with this awful situation where we get Ted Cruz. Well, Texas is a pretty big state, but we get the Ted Cruzes of the world. But if you know Southerners, like, you really get to know a number of Southerners. Many people, even very well-educated Southerners that I've met, say things like, we're occupied territory and someday we'll be free.
So my question always is, if Lincoln hadn't been assassinated, would they have completed Reconstruction and fixed like when you look at Germany, the worst country in the world in the 1940s, and then we come in, we occupy them with 1 million Allied troops after the war. We knocked them on their ass, the same way we knocked the Confederacy on their ass. But then we occupied them, we made Nazism illegal. So there was still a ton of Nazis in Germany, but they had to shut up. And eventually they got old and they died. And we were, in our occupying of Germany, we were pretty freaking nice to them. We helped rebuild Germany, and Germany became one of the greatest, nicest nations in the world. Germans, their accent still, makes my balls shrink, but they are super nice people who regret, the actions of their great grandparents. Ditto kind of with Japan. We occupied Japan for years, helped them rebuild Japan, a good global citizen. The South.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just saying the South really didn't get that, where we, with the Reconstruction was short-circuited. We should have gone in there with all sorts of resources and made it nice, as long as they towed the line and, believed in in some basic rules of union. And
we tried to some degree, but the South's wealth was their slaves. So by freeing the slaves, it basically just crippled them economically. And Lincoln had this brilliant idea that to create more peace in the country, he would get I guess the Democrats and Republicans were switched. So he'd get a Democrat, which is the right-wing party at the time. And so Johnson was actually a Democrat. Johnson was basically pro-slavery. And so when Lincoln got assassinated and Johnson became president, he basically pulled back from Reconstruction, besides the fact that there was an ongoing guerrilla war against the people that were involved in Reconstruction. So there was people putting bombs in military camps and things like that. So the Southerners didn't feel that they'd lost. I mean, they were still fighting, and they've continued to ever since.
And I have this realization this morning where 2/3 of the cost of a business is wages. And so if you're not having to pay wages, if you're getting your labor for free, that means that you can be a schmuck and have a successful business. Donald Trump, famously a schmuck, but he started off with hundreds of millions of dollars to play with. And so, basically over time, he took $500 million and 40 years later turned it into $500 million from being a shitty businessman. So these Southern plantation owners might have been freaking idiots who just happened to succeed because they were getting free labor. And so you might have had an empire of idiots.
There's that, and because of the recessive sickle cell gene, many African Americans don't get malaria. And so the South, you have to understand, is just awful, bug-ridden swamp. It's just terrible.
Picking cotton, Irishmen couldn't do it.
Right. Yeah, they tried they brought the Irish to Barbados, and they all just died. And so, and they, selectively bred people to try and so basically what I'm saying is that they could grow crops that really were a very bad idea, but because they kind of had this labor that was somewhat more resistant to the horrible conditions, that also helped them. So
yeah, cotton is a terrible labor-intensive crop. You can't profitably grow it. Before you had the cotton gin, which helped some, I guess, but without free labor. Richard Pryor had a nice little routine, I think, where he talked about all the adaptations that he as a black guy has for living in harsh conditions. The curly hair that doesn't get caught on stuff, the dark skin that protects against the sun, the this and the that. And then the routine ends with, then why the fuck am I in Detroit?
and I remember in his routine, he would also say he went to Africa and he said, I call myself black and somebody lied to me. These guys are black.
Yeah, but, like if you watch the Henry Louis Gates show about where they take famous people and they trace their lineage. For if it's a non-Jewish, if it's a Jewish person, their lineage always goes back to some terrible village that was always getting sacked in Latvia or frickin' Romania or something, where they basically built their houses out of sticks. And but if you're somebody who's not Jewish and you're in America, your lineage usually traces back to you were on one side or the other of the Civil War, and if you're black, you've got a bunch of horrible white relatives. If you're white, you maybe have a couple black people in there too. But yeah, everybody is wildly mixed and diluted, which isn't terrible.
Well, getting back to the topic of the day in my mind, do you think that you're talking about what if Reconstruction had been successful? What do you think Trump was thinking that was going to happen? He wanted regime change, and Bibi talked him into it. He thought that it was going to be easy, just like Putin thought he was going to walk into Kiev.
So the New York Times did an article on this on February 14th. Netanyahu buttonholed Trump for 3 hours. In the Oval Office, talking about how it was going to, I'm sure, be a cakewalk, that the regime is ready to tumble. And 2 weeks later, Trump declared war. And obviously the regime didn't tumble. And somebody pointed out that the time, if we were going to do it at all, was before the Iranians' internal Gestapo slaughtered 40,000 Iranian protesters. but those protesters would have been the most likely people to help overturn the regime. But by the time we went to war, they were dead.
That's
sorry.
Go ahead, Donald. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I just wanted to throw in one thing, which is that the Economist last week said that we've returned to the day before the peace thing. The accord brings us back to the day before the war.
Minus 14 American troops and $300 billion in weird reparations and another $80 billion in war costs.
Right. I mean, they said except for the destruction of the world economy. I mean, but the thing that kills me, and I mean, I want to say this because it's been on my mind a lot, is that the nuclear accord that Obama made with Iran had every developed country and many, many other lesser developed countries all signed up for it. And we had absolute monitoring of every single solitary thing. Everybody agreed on it. It was a very, very good accord. And so he's faced with the idea of how the fuck is he going to enforce anything that he thinks he's talking about. The Iranians
Trump campaigned against that Obama accord, calling it a terrible deal and saying that we gave Iran money. What we did was unfreeze their assets.
Well, I can talk about the specifics of that because I just found them out when you asked me a few minutes ago before the show started. So we gave Obama returned $1.7 billion to Iran. What happened is we used to be friends with the Shah of Iran. That was a friendly country to us. There was a coup where the Islamic Republic was established in 1979. In 1979, the Shah had paid the U.S. $400 million for weaponry. I'm sure he'd pay, this was a thing, an ongoing thing. He'd pay us for weapons. We'd give him weapons. We liked the guy. Then he gets overthrown. We're sitting on $400 million with interest that grows to, by the time the agreement is done, 1.7 billion. So the agreement gets done and Obama says, here's your money back plus the interest it earns. Also, Iran makes a ton of money selling oil. And that money, when it sells, goes through Western banks. So before the agreement was signed, for decades probably, or at least years and years, Western banks were not letting Iran have their money. They said, when you behave, you get your money. And so this agreement gets signed, and Western banks, which was not just America, but a coalition of countries, said, here is what you earned that we've been holding on for you. And it was between 50 and $100 billion. So, and then the Republicans for 20 years have been saying, Obama just gave them free money. Well, okay, Obama gave them money. It was their money that he released back to them. You can argue that they're still assholes and maybe we shouldn't have done it, but it was never like us just taking our money and handing it over.
But as Donald pointed out, we also had the right to inspect their...
On a daily basis, we had inspectors there all the time. And it wasn't a perfect agreement because we could inspect known nuclear sites, right?
Right.
And we could look around for other nuclear sites, but would we find every hidden nuclear site? Not necessarily, but having detectives on the ground in Iran all the time looking at their shit was better than nothing, which is what we've had under Trump.
Which is why Iran is stronger and we are weaker, and is perceived by the rest of the world. We couldn't even protect our own bases, let alone the other Arabian countries in the area. And they know that we can't protect them now. And Iran can now charge a toll to go through the strait, which it couldn't do before, because it knows it can shut down the world economy. So it's strong.
So a tanker full of oil is worth about $250 million. And Iran is looking at charging between $1 and $2 million per tanker, a little less than 1%. And
another thing is that I'm thinking right now, we haven't really seen it, is the when are they going to trust that the Straits of Hormuz are actually open?
Right.
Because they've said they were opening it a few times, but the insurance companies say, yeah, like hell, we're going to let you go through that place. So
we can't trust what's coming out of the White House. We don't know what the White House is telling us. We've lost the sense of trust in what they're telling us. He's gone back on his word many times.
Yeah. So here's my specific gripe. Here's what I want to yell about.
Okay.
So
roar.
Biden, about 1/3 of the way into his presidency, abruptly pulled us out of Afghanistan with disastrous consequences. Afghanistan immediately falls. A bunch of American troops plus Afghanis got blown up at a point of exit. All our equipment, we had to scuttle it, leave, like tens of billions of worth of weapons behind, which were, often salvageable. We gave up a really good position in Kabul, and it was a mistake. We probably should have at least held on to Kabul. But we've been there for 20 years. We thought that was enough. The longest war in U.S. Anyway, Biden took a huge hit in approval. It fucked up the whole rest of his presidency. He declined in approval by like 10% and never recovered. And what I'm afraid of, you could argue that what Trump did is even worse than what Biden did. They both kind of relied on shitty intel.
Right.
Biden believed that the Afghan government and army could hold the country. They immediately collapsed.
Right.
Trump believed, but Trump started a war for nothing and ended up increasing the power of the enemy. And the U.S. gave Iran back under Obama $1.7 billion. We're going to be giving them $300 billion, 170 times more than. And what I'm afraid of is that this isn't going to fuck up Trump's presidency. At least, polls are starting to come out.
You can't be any
We're not seeing him taking a hit in approval.
Well, his approval rating was already pretty low. So maybe just the diehards are left. And
I want to bring up something that's really important about what.
One moment, Donald. I think I'll get back to you right away, but I wanted to correct one thing that Rick said was they followed their intelligence. The intel that they got was wrong. Biden followed the intelligence. We've been preparing the Afghan army for years. We've been funding them. We've been giving them weapons, munitions. We've been giving them training. Trump fired his military intelligence. He replaced his military intelligence because they were telling him what he didn't want to hear. That was the big difference.
Let's get Don's point here.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I just want to say this one thing. The agreement, Biden inherited an agreement that Trump had made, and what he did is he kept the agreement. So it wasn't just his intel necessarily, because he kind of had a choice of saying, well, the United States doesn't honor their agreements if we don't like them, or saying, okay, even though we don't like the agreement, we said we're going to do it and we're going to honor it. It was actually Trump who negotiated the withdrawal from Afghanistan, not
with
Biden.
The Taliban, right? He told the Taliban that just hold off on attacking the capital or whatever, and we will withdraw the U.S. by. He wanted to withdraw it under his term in December of 2020, and he had to be talked out of it by his generals. But Biden, inherited, but that's no excuse because the buck stops with the president.
Yeah, I agree. But also good context to understand these decisions. And there's a lack of context for understanding the decisions that Trump has
Well,
made.
yeah, but like I'm not sure that people who watch right-wing media even hear about a bunch of this stuff.
Oh no, they don't.
And I want Trump to take a hit I want Trump to be responsible for his terrible judgment the same way Biden took a hit for his bad judgment in withdrawing the way he did.
Yeah, he shortchanged the allies as well. They were surprised that we did it. And this is another thing that we have. You get allies before you take action. And Trump took action and then said, where are my allies? This is a backwards kind of thinking. This is someone who really has a childlike view of the world and rewards loyalty to him until he thinks you're disloyal, and then he'll throw you under the bus. So it's not a two-way street of loyalty. And the other thing I thought is I was reading that even Fox News hosts have been expressing their displeasure with some of the things that Trump is doing. So there seems to be, it's creeping into the, I don't want to use too strong a term, but the far right radio, the far right media, which has always been a huge echo chamber for whatever Trump says, has started to change their tune a little bit. So maybe because you're only as good as the information that you get, and if people are getting the same information from the same sources all the time, why would they change their minds? So maybe
I hope they do, but also the Democrats need to roar for the next 4.5 months.
I totally
make
agree
the case that this was terrible political judgment, and that maybe you need different political leadership, at least in the House and Senate, for the next 2 years. Because
throw the bums out. Yeah, we can't.
This jagoff, the pool is the reflecting pool is ridiculous. It's so trivial that compared to the Hegseth wants $80 billion to pay for the war. The pool cost $18 million, which is 1/4 of 1/10 of 1% what the war cost. But we see reports on that on MSNBC, on CNN, showing that it didn't work at all. The paint is peeling. The pool is, but the guy has terrible judgment. Is the terrible judgment.
So tacky. He pulled up the Rose Garden and he put on a UFC championship.
Yeah, but will any of this, will the case be made in any kind of convincing way to win back the frickin' House?
Yeah, we need more people to roar. This is unsatisfactory. We cannot just sit back and take it. We can't just watch what's happening and say, well, it's not my problem. It is our problem. We're the country, we have the tackiest president, and most historians rate him as the worst.
So, maybe the argument is to MAGAs, well, you may enjoy how upset Trump makes us. You may enjoy our lib tears, but it's at the cost of $4 gas, of no Social Security, of no health insurance, of getting fucked day in and day out, of no new jobs, no new manufacturing jobs. You're making huge sacrifices in your own lives to buy upset libs.
Yeah, the elites are getting very wealthy. There are people who are already wealthy are getting wealthier, but the people that are trying, have to go to a laundromat to do their laundry, or have to drive to work, and the drive is costing more. And the groceries, when they go and they look, there's fewer things that they want, and they cost more. And this is all the repercussions of the economic effects that have trickled down from this war of choice. And these types of things were avoidable. They were preventable. This was not something that had to happen. So who do we hold accountable? We hold the person in the White House accountable, but we also hold those who are supporting him in Congress, in the House.
Yeah, and how much are you willing to pay in your life to keep trans women with dicks out of women's bathrooms? How worried are you about frickin' bathrooms that you're going to lose Social Security, lose Medicare, pay hundreds of dollars more for gas and groceries every freaking month because for these stupid culture war freaking points?
Very good question.
I went to the store like 2 weeks ago and I was going to buy some toilet bowl cleaner, but the line was so long at the cash register. I said, fuck it, I'll come back later. It was $5.99, and I went in yesterday and got some, and it was $6.99.
Whoa.
$5.90 went up $1 in 2 weeks. And I mean, everything is going like that. And the old thing, it's the economy, stupid. I think that if the Democrats really hammer on that, I think that's the biggest message. I think we have a lot of other things we should be addressing, like Rick said. But
yeah, that hits home at the polling stations. I think more than anything else is the economy's stupid, and also we have seen historically that there's this myth that the Republicans are better than the Democrats, but if you track things, that turns out to be a wash. It doesn't really matter. Things happen that affect the economy, but you can have a bad president, and that will take down the economy. And bad policy will take down the American. And one of the things that the Republicans had that I believed in also was engagement, free trade. If you had someone, why treat them like an enemy when you can treat them like a trading partner? And this would be a way to bring people together. But Trump is with his nonsense about tariffs. He's destroying everything that the Republican Party used to stand for. And they're just sitting there with muted applause, watching this happen. When is someone going to grow a spinal cord, stand up straight, and take them on?
Well, another thing that's been kind of disturbing me recently is that the social, as Rick pointed out, the social security systems are reaching the point of insolvency.
Right.
And one thing that was really helping support it was all the immigrants. I mean, the United States has the possibility to maintain or increase its population, especially of young people, which is what we need. But instead, what we're doing is the opposite.
Taking jobs that we wouldn't do and starting businesses we wouldn't start.
Growth in the U.S. is at its lowest point in the history of the country. It's not like we're exploding. It's the population growth is about 0.2% a year, the lowest. It's almost zero. If it weren't for immigrants, it would in the next couple of years, it would drop below replacement and we would have a shrinking population. So you can argue about whether it's good to have more people or fewer people, but it's not like we were being overrun. I don't think most people have had their lives improved in any way by the deportations.
Oh God. Yeah.
People who run for-profit prisons are doing pretty well.
Kind of something. Those prisons are getting chased out of communities because communities don't want AI data centers, and they don't want these giant,
not in my backyard. Yes, we have a lot of that kind of.
And there's a way to give, there's a way to save Social Security and Medicare and give people, every household, $2,000 checks to pay for increased prices. We just print more money. And that is highly inflationary. That devalues the money. But that's what we've been doing. Yes. And this past year, we're spending, a couple $100 billion on this war, again, which is highly inflationary, and getting not jack shit. So we might as well print money and at least get some of that money for ourselves.
Yeah. And do you think that Trump, whose presidency would be defined by his own personal vanity and his own personal sense of loyalty to him, not to the United States, not to the Constitution, but do you think that he thought that we would get Iranian oil out of this and make us rich again? I'm trying to struggle about what he thought the long term.
He thought there would be a quick victory that
like
he
Putin
would be
didn't.
able
Yeah,
to. I don't know that he's that detail oriented.
yeah,
Maybe I mean he grabbed Venezuelan oil. I don't know how much money he or the U.S. has made from that,
yeah.
but I could ask AI.
Yeah, piracy at the high seas.
You can't. But I'm gonna tell you right now that Venezuelan oil is very tarry,
Yeah.
and it requires certain very sophisticated refineries which don't exist. So
The
it'll be a
US companies
while
didn't
before
want
we
it.
can even use that oil. Yeah.
All right, guys, I'm going to wind down rather. And is
Well,
there?
how much? Let's see. How much money have we made from crappy Venezuelan oil? Revenue from U.S. controlled sales of oil has surpassed $1 billion. Rather than keeping the profits, the U.S. government has directed this revenue back to Venezuela. So, okay. So we didn't really steal their oil, I guess.
I guess not.
Though I have read that the broker for the sale of this oil is a buddy of Trump's.
Oh yeah,
who gets 1 or 2%. So this guy's made 10 million.
Somebody's getting rich. Yeah, yeah. So and if you're in the inner circle, the Trump presidency has been wonderful to you. But if you're, and there's a disconnect between Main Street and Wall Street. Wall Street, the companies are still doing, like if you're an AI company, it doesn't really matter what's going on. They're still getting record revenues and their stock prices are still going up. And so we have this illusion of wealth when the average person on Main Street trying to get groceries, get gas, these types of things, they're the ones feeling the pinch. And there seems to be no empathy or sympathy from the White House trickling down to those people. They do not feel their pain. So they have to speak with their only power that they have, which is their vote. So go and
yeah,
vote.
but I mean, some voters are gonna, continue to vote for the guy who gets on Air Force One, looks at a reporter and says, "Fuck you, fatty," and they'll pay $1,000 a month for the privilege of having a president that is mean to the people they don't like.
And that's the idea of this He-Man macho kind of thing that's also redefining what the idea of America should be. It should be a bully. We should go out and take. There is a sentiment for that too. That sentiment has never worked out historically. It doesn't seem to be. But these people, I don't think, have steeped themselves in history and learned the lessons of the past. So
what you're saying is that the arc of the moral universe eventually pokes you in the ass.
I'd like to say that when I was bullied quite a bit in junior high school, and every single one of those bullies is either dead or in jail.
Yeah, so me too. I just looked up I had a PE teacher who was mean to me and other people, but he especially liked picking on me. That guy became a high school principal.
And that's punishment enough?
I don't know. I mean, no, he seemed like he failed upward.
Yeah.
Well, that happens.
Yeah. And many bullies, get to the top, and their definition of the top. And they get there by stepping on the necks of others. And so then people want to emulate them and think that's the way to be. And so now we have a president who insults people, makes fun of disabled people. And so many people are emulating this. And this is why Theodore Roosevelt said that the presidency was the bully pulpit, because, you could get to speak to a lot of people and they get to hear your message. And so we're having an influence based on, the average American is having their standard of behavior towards each other weighed down rather than lifted up.
Could be. I would kind of think that maybe in some sense that he attracts the bullies,
right?
Because it's only 28% or 30% of people or something like that. So I think he attracts the bullies. And I also want to say that I've read significant research that CEOs are actually usually more empathetic, and nicer, good ones are actually, and all that's the case with the people, you know, many of them that I've met, because this, you know, if you're bullying people, then the people that you're bullying hate you. And that you know, that's why women, I think, are more successful as CEOs than men are, because they're more interested in kind of keeping harmony and making sure everybody's taken care of.
Well, this is like the team does better than the individual, and this is why we need allies as a country.
I can recommend a show where everybody's horrible called The Audacity, which is set in Silicon Valley among tech billionaires. And my wife and I just finished watching season 1, and it's about these billionaire tech bros. And it's one of those shows where everybody is a huge asshole in one way or another. But it's fun to see it work out, like to see how the mechanics of assholery plays out.
Yeah, sometimes you see a play or something like that where there's no one to root for.
Yeah.
Everyone is so dysfunctional in their own individual way, but in any case, it could still be enjoyable. I did watch Rooster at your recommendation.
That's a great, like, I've got a big canker sore in my mouth from stress and freaking out all day. Rooster is a great show to watch if you want your canker sores to go away. It's very relaxing. It's low stakes. It's like Parks and Rec, where you've got a bunch of good people trying to, you know, they still have their comedic differences, but nobody is trying to be a complete piece of shit.
Yeah. It was I watched the whole first season. I didn't exactly binge watch it, but it didn't take me long to get through it.
It sounds like a good one to watch when I'm working out.
Yeah,
it's nice. You don't have that jangly, edgier seat feeling that horrible shit's about to happen at any moment.
Yeah,
I like shows like that.
All right, guys. So
okay, thanks so much. Wonderful to see you guys.
You too, and I appreciate your time. And what we'll do is we'll go back stage for the two of you guys, and I'll say goodbye to the viewing audience. And then we'll talk about when we want to do episode 3 of season 2 of Roar. Thank you again.
Thanks.
All right. So we solved nothing, but we did get a chance to get some stuff off of our chest. And I'm waiting for November to be able to raise my hand in the form of my vote. And that's what we're encouraging you to do. Go out and vote to make sure that this is not tolerated anymore. We can stand up for what's right about this country, and what's right about this country of the United States can fix what's wrong with it.